Your mind does not race because something is wrong with you. It races because it learned that staying alert feels safer than slowing down. Overthinking is not a personality flaw or a lack of discipline. It is a protective response shaped by pressure, uncertainty, fear, and constant stimulation. When your mind refuses to rest, it is not trying to sabotage you. It is trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. The human brain evolved to anticipate danger. Thinking ahead once meant survival. Noticing patterns prevented harm. Preparing for the future kept people alive. The problem is that modern life rarely provides clear resolution. Threats are no longer physical, but emotional, mental, and social. Deadlines, expectations, judgment, responsibility, and uncertainty replace predators and scarcity. The brain does not distinguish between physical danger and emotional discomfort. It reacts to both with heightened alertness. This is why your mind keeps scanning, replaying, and analyzing, even when nothing immediate is happening. Another reason your mind never stops racing is the lack of closure. Unfinished conversations, unresolved emotions, unanswered questions, and unmade decisions remain open loops in the brain. The mind seeks completion. When it cannot find it, thoughts repeat. Repetition feels like progress, but it rarely leads anywhere. It only drains energy and deepens mental fatigue. The brain believes that if it keeps thinking, the answer will eventually appear even. When the real solution is rest or emotional processing, overthinking is also closely tied to control. When life feels uncertain, the mind tries to regain control through analysis. Thinking creates the illusion of safety. It feels better to worry than to feel helpless. The mind believes that if it anticipates every outcome, it can prevent pain, regret, or failure. This belief is understandable but flawed. Thinking has limits. Beyond a certain point, it stops helping and starts harming. Overthinking is thinking without direction and without trust. Emotional avoidance is another hidden cause. Many people believe they are anxious because they overthink. Often the opposite is true. They overthink because they are avoiding emotion. Feeling sadness, fear, disappointment, or uncertainty can feel overwhelming. The mind fills space with thoughts to avoid feeling what is uncomfortable. Thoughts become a distraction from emotion. The racing mind is often a shield protecting you from feelings you were never taught how to process safely. Fear of regret also fuels constant thinking. The mind replays decisions, conversations, and future scenarios trying to find the perfect outcome. It wants certainty that no mistake will be made. Perfectionism keeps the mind trapped in endless loops because perfection is unattainable. The brain does not know when to stop searching because there is no finish line. This creates constant tension and self-doubt. Modern stimulation worsens the problem. Screens, notifications, opinions, news, and endless information streams prevent natural mental shutdown. The brain never receives a clear signal that it is safe to rest. There is always something else to process. Without boundaries, the mind stays active by default. Rest becomes unfamiliar and even uncomfortable. Self-pressure plays a major role. When you expect yourself to always have answers, clarity, and control, your mind stays hypervigilant. It scans constantly, trying to meet impossible standards. Pressure keeps the nervous system activated. A pressured mind cannot relax. It does not feel allowed to slow down. Identity also matters. Many people unconsciously tie their worth to thinking, problem-solving, and mental productivity. Slowing down feels like losing value. Stillness feels lazy. Silence feels unproductive. This belief keeps the mind running even when it is exhausted. Lack of emotional regulation is another core issue. Emotions that are not felt become thoughts. The mind tries to solve feelings instead of experiencing them. But feelings cannot be solved through logic. They require presence. When emotions are ignored, they return as rumination, worry, and mental noise. Fear of stillness keeps the cycle alive. Stillness allows buried thoughts and emotions to surface. Many people stay mentally busy to avoid what they might feel if everything became quiet. Movement becomes avoidance. Noise becomes safety. Over time, the brain learns patterns. Certain thoughts repeat so often they become habits. These mental loops feel automatic and uncontrollable. The mind returns to familiar paths even when they cause distress because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. Lack of self-trust also fuels racing thoughts. When you do not trust yourself to handle outcomes, your mind stays alert, planning for every possibility. Hypervigilance replaces confidence. The brain believes constant thinking is necessary for survival. Past experiences also play a role. The mind replays old events, trying to rewrite them. It believes replaying will change the past or prevent future pain. But the past cannot be changed through thought. It can only be integrated through awareness. Uncertainty and tolerance adds another layer. Many people struggle with not knowing. The mind fills uncertainty with speculation. Speculation creates anxiety. Anxiety fuels more thinking. The loop continues. Harsh inner criticism keeps the mind noisy. Constant evaluation, self-correction, and judgment create mental tension. Criticism does not improve clarity. It increases pressure. Comparison adds fuel. Comparing your progress, success, or clarity to others creates self-doubt and rumination. The mind tries to catch up by thinking more. Weak mental boundaries allow you to absorb others' emotions, expectations, and problems. Absorption overwhelms the mind. It carries too much that does not belong to it. Fear of missing something keeps the brain scanning constantly. The mind believes it must stay alert to avoid failure, loss, or embarrassment. Scanning never ends. The deepest truth is this. Your mind races because it learned that staying active feels safer than resting. It is not broken. It is overworked. Fighting it only increases tension. Understanding it creates relief. The goal is not to stop thinking. The goal is to teach your mind when it is safe to rest. Clarity does not come from force. It comes from safety, trust, and regulation. In the next part, you will learn how overthinking hijacks your peace and energy, and why awareness is the first step toward mental clarity. This is where understanding turns into relief, and where your mind begins to slow down naturally. Your mind does not just overthink. It consumes energy at a rate that most people never realize. Overthinking is not a neutral habit. It quietly drains your mental clarity, emotional stability, and physical vitality. When thoughts loop endlessly, the brain never truly recovers. It stays in a low-level state of stress that slowly erodes peace. Overthinking hijacks your peace first by keeping your nervous system activated. Every repetitive thought signals the brain that something needs attention. Even when nothing is actually happening, the body reacts as if there is a problem to solve. Stress hormones remain elevated. Muscles stay tense. Breathing becomes shallow. Relaxation never fully arrives. Peace requires safety. Overthinking tells the body that safety has not been reached. Energy loss follows quickly. The brain consumes enormous amounts of energy when it is stuck in analysis. Each thought requires effort. Each replay drains resources. When the mind never rests, fatigue becomes constant. You may sleep but wake up tired because the brain never shut down. Mental exhaustion feels physical because it is physical. Overthinking also fractures attention. Instead of being present, your awareness jumps between past and future. You replay what already happened and imagine what might happen next. This fragmentation makes it difficult to focus, complete tasks, or enjoy moments. Peace exists in presence. Overthinking pulls you away from it repeatedly. Emotionally, overthinking amplifies distress. Thoughts intensify. Feelings fuel more thoughts. Worry creates anxiety. Anxiety creates more worry. Doubt creates fear. Fear creates more doubt. This feedback loop magnifies emotional reactions far beyond the original trigger. Small problems feel overwhelming because they are processed repeatedly. Overthinking also weakens confidence. When you constantly question decisions and imagine alternative outcomes, you stop trusting yourself. Self-trust erodes slowly. Each time you revisit a choice, you send a message to your mind that it was not good enough. Doubt becomes the default response. A doubting mind cannot feel peaceful. Energy is also drained through indecision. Overthinking keeps you stuck between options. You delay action, waiting for certainty. This delay creates frustration and self-criticism. Mental energy is spent debating rather than moving. Action often brings clarity. Overthinking postpones it. Overthinking hijacks peace by creating a sense of urgency that never resolves. There is always something else to consider, analyze, or fix. The mind never reaches completion. This unfinished feeling creates restlessness. Restlessness prevents calm. The body also pays the price. Chronic thinking keeps the stress response active. Over time, this affects digestion, immunity, sleep, and mood. Peace is not just a mental state. It is a physiological one. Overthinking disrupts both. Another way overthinking drains energy is through emotional avoidance. Thoughts replace feelings. Instead of processing sadness, fear, or uncertainty, the mind analyzes them. This prevents emotional release. Unreleased emotion stays stored as tension. Stored tension consumes energy. Overthinking also reduces creativity. Creative insight requires mental space. When the mind is crowded with repetitive thought, new ideas cannot emerge. This creates a feeling of being stuck. Stuckness increases frustration, which fuels more thinking. Peace is further hijacked by comparison. Overthinking invites comparison with others' past selves or imagined futures. Comparison creates pressure and dissatisfaction. Satisfaction requires acceptance. Overthinking resists acceptance. The constant mental noise also dulls enjoyment. Even pleasant moments are interrupted by analysis. You are physically present, but mentally elsewhere. Peace requires immersion. Overthinking prevents it. Another hidden cost is emotional numbness. When the mind is overloaded, it may shut down feelings to cope. This numbness feels empty and disconnected. Peace is not numbness. It is presence without tension. Overthinking also distorts perspective. When thoughts repeat, they feel important even when they are not. The scale of problems increases. Perspective shrinks. Calm requires proportion. Overthinking removes it. Your energy is also drained by self-criticism. Overthinking often includes harsh internal commentary. This internal pressure consumes emotional resources. Kindness restores energy. Criticism depletes it. The most damaging effect of overthinking is that it teaches the brain that peace is unsafe. The mind learns that silence means danger. This creates fear of stillness. Fear keeps the cycle alive. Understanding this is essential. Overthinking is not a lack of intelligence. It is a misdirected attempt at safety. Your mind believes it is protecting you, even as it exhausts you. The solution is not to fight thoughts. Fighting creates more tension. The solution is awareness. When you see how overthinking hijacks your peace, you stop identifying with it. You create distance. Distance restores choice. In the next part, you will learn about the fear behind constant thinking and why addressing fear rather than thoughts is the key to lasting clarity. Asterisk. Overthinking is rarely about logic. It is about fear. Beneath the endless thoughts, worries, and mental loops, there is almost always a deeper fear driving the process. When you understand this fear, the grip of overthinking begins to loosen. Until then, the mind keeps spinning because it believes it must protect you. The most common fear behind constant thinking is the fear of uncertainty. The mind dislikes not knowing. Uncertainty feels like danger because it removes predictability. When outcomes are unclear, the brain fills the gap with scenarios. It imagines every possible outcome in an attempt to feel prepared. Preparation feels like safety even when it creates exhaustion. Another powerful fear is the fear of making the wrong decision. Many people believe that one wrong choice could ruin everything. This belief keeps the mind stuck, analyzing options endlessly. The brain believes that if it thinks long enough, the perfect answer will appear. But life does not offer perfect answers. It offers trade-offs. Fear prevents acceptance of this reality. Fear of regret also drives constant thinking. The mind replays past choices, trying to rewrite them. It imagines future scenarios to avoid future regret. This backward and forward movement traps the mind outside the present. Regret lives in the past. Anxiety lives in the future. Peace lives only in now. Another hidden fear is the fear of losing control. When life feels unpredictable, the mind tries to regain control through thinking. Control feels like safety. The brain believes that if it understands everything, it can manage everything. But understanding does not equal control. This illusion keeps the mind overactive. Fear of judgment plays a major role. Many people overthink social interactions, conversations, and decisions because they fear how they will be perceived. They replay words, tone, and reactions, trying to ensure acceptance. This fear keeps the mind scanning for social threats, even when none are present. Fear of failure also fuels overthinking. Failure threatens identity. It challenges the belief that you are competent, capable, or worthy. To avoid this threat, the mind analyzes every step trying to eliminate risk. But risk cannot be eliminated. It can only be managed. Another deep fear is the fear of emotional pain. Overthinking often acts as a buffer against feeling. Thinking keeps emotion at a distance. The mind believes that staying busy prevents pain from surfacing. In reality, this only delays emotional processing. Fear of stillness is another driver. Stillness allows thoughts and feelings to surface without distraction. Many people fear what they might feel if everything became quiet. Noise feels safer than silence. There is also fear of letting go. Letting go means accepting that you cannot control everything. This acceptance feels like vulnerability. The mind resists vulnerability by staying active. Another fear is the fear of change. Change threatens familiarity. Even painful familiarity feels safer than unknown improvement. Overthinking keeps you mentally anchored to what you know. Fear of responsibility can also drive mental loops. When outcomes matter, the mind becomes hypervigilant. It believes that constant thinking is necessary to prevent harm. Another subtle fear is the fear of trusting yourself. If you do not trust your ability to adapt, recover, or cope, the mind stays alert, planning for every possibility. Self-trust calms the mind. Lack of it keeps thoughts racing. Fear of missing something important keeps the mind scanning constantly. The brain believes vigilance prevents loss. At its core, overthinking is the mind saying, "Stay alert, something might go wrong." It is not trying to harm you. It is trying to protect you from imagined danger. The key is not to eliminate fear, but to relate to it differently. When you acknowledge fear without judgment, it loses intensity. Fear thrives in resistance. Awareness softens it. When you stop fighting, fear, the mind no longer needs to shout. In the next part, you will learn how to separate thoughts from reality and why not every thought deserves your attention. This is where mental clarity truly begins. One of the most important skills for ending overthinking is learning how to separate thoughts from reality. Most people live as if every thought they have is a fact, a warning, or a command. They do not question thoughts. They obey them. This is why the mind feels overwhelming. When thoughts are treated as reality, the nervous system reacts as if danger is present, even when nothing is actually happening. Thoughts are not reality. They are mental events. They appear based on memory, emotion, habit, and conditioning. A thought can feel urgent, convincing, and intense without being true. The mind produces thoughts automatically, just as the heart beats automatically. You do not choose most of your thoughts. They arise on their own. Overthinking happens when you identify with every thought. Identification means you believe the thought represents truth or requires action. When a thought says something bad might happen, the body responds with stress. When a thought says you did something wrong, guilt appears. When a thought says you are not enough, self-doubt grows. The problem is not the thought itself. The problem is believing it. Learning to separate thoughts from reality begins with awareness. Awareness creates distance. Instead of saying this is happening, you begin to say, I am having the thought that this might happen. This small shift changes everything. It reminds the brain that a thought is not an event. It is a mental suggestion. Reality exists in the present moment. It includes what you can see, hear, feel, and verify right now. Thoughts often pull you away from this moment into imagined futures or replayed pasts. The more time you spend in thought, the less grounded you feel. Grounding brings clarity. Thought without grounding creates anxiety. Another reason thoughts feel so powerful is repetition. When a thought repeats, it feels important. Familiarity creates belief. The brain assumes that repeated thoughts must matter. But repetition does not equal truth. It only means a neural pathway has been activated often. Separating thoughts from reality also means understanding that thoughts are influenced by emotion. When you feel tired, stressed, or afraid, your thoughts become more negative. This does not mean reality changed. It means your internal state did. Mood colors, perception. The mind is also biased toward threat. It looks for what could go wrong, rather than what is going right. This bias helped humans survive, but it causes unnecessary stress today. Recognizing this bias helps you question anxious thoughts rather than obey them. Another important practice is noticing the language of thoughts. Thoughts often use absolute words like always, never, everything, or nothing. Reality is rarely absolute. When you notice extreme language, it is a signal that the thought may not be accurate. Separating thoughts from reality also involves recognizing imagination. The mind imagines scenarios that have not happened. It treats these scenarios as real threats. The body reacts, even though nothing has occurred. Learning to label imagination as imagination reduces its impact. A powerful step in this process is learning to observe thoughts without trying to stop them. Trying to stop thoughts creates resistance. Resistance increases tension. Observation allows thoughts to pass without engagement. When you observe thoughts, you notice they come and go. They rise and fall. They change. This reveals their temporary nature. What is temporary cannot define you. Another important realization is that clarity does not come from eliminating thoughts. It comes from choosing which thoughts deserve attention. You do not need to analyze every idea that appears. You can let many thoughts pass without response. This skill takes practice. At first, the mind pulls attention back into thinking. Over time, awareness grows stronger. The gap between thought and reaction widens. In that gap, peace appears. Separating thoughts from reality also means trusting the present moment. If something truly needs attention, it will appear in reality, not just thought. Real problems usually announce themselves clearly. This does not mean ignoring responsibility. It means responding to what is real rather than what is imagined. Another layer of this practice is self-compassion. When you notice anxious thoughts, you do not criticize yourself. Criticism adds another layer of thinking. You acknowledge the thought and return to the present. This gentleness matters. Overthinking fades when the mind feels safe. Safety comes from grounding awareness and self-trust. As you learn to separate thoughts from reality, the mind gradually slows. Thoughts lose authority. You regain choice. In the next part, you will learn how to break the cycle of mental loops, why repetition is not a sign of importance, but a habit that can be retrained. This is where lasting change begins. Mental loops are one of the most exhausting experiences of overthinking. A thought appears, triggers emotion, leads to more thoughts, and circles back again. The content may change slightly, but the feeling stays the same. You think you are making progress, yet nothing resolves. This cycle can repeat for hours, days, or even years. Breaking this loop is not about forcing the mind to stop. It is about understanding why the loop exists and gently retraining how the mind responds. Mental loops form because the brain is seeking resolution. The mind believes that repetition will eventually produce clarity or safety. Each loop is an attempt to solve something that feels unfinished. The problem is that many loops are not logical problems. They are emotional ones. Logic cannot resolve what emotion has not released. The brain does not know this difference automatically. It keeps trying the same strategy because it has not learned another option. One reason loops persist is familiarity. Even painful thoughts feel familiar, and familiarity feels safe to the nervous system. The mind returns to known patterns because the unknown feels riskier. This is why people often loop on the same worries even when they know the thoughts are unhelpful. The brain chooses predictable discomfort over unfamiliar calm. Another reason loops continue is resistance. When you try to push thoughts away, argue with them, or demand that they stop, you increase their intensity. Resistance sends a signal that the thought is important or dangerous. The brain responds by repeating it louder. Fighting the loop strengthens it. Breaking the cycle begins with a shift from resistance to recognition. Recognition means noticing the loop without judgment. You see the thought pattern repeating and acknowledge it calmly. This removes urgency. Urgency fuels loops. Calm observation weakens them. Another critical step is interrupting the pattern physically, not mentally. Mental loops live in the mind, but they are sustained by the body. When the body is tense, tired, or overstimulated, the mind loops more easily. Simple physical grounding can interrupt the cycle. Slowing your breath, relaxing your shoulders, standing up, or changing your environment sends a signal of safety to the nervous system. Safety quiets. Repetition. Another powerful practice is naming the loop. Instead of following the content of the thought, you label the pattern. You might say internally, this is the worry loop, or this is the replay loop. Naming shifts you from being inside the loop to observing it. Observation reduces identification. Breaking loops also requires accepting uncertainty. Many loops exist because the mind wants certainty that cannot be obtained. The loop continues because the question has no final answer. Learning to tolerate not knowing allows the mind to rest. Acceptance is not giving up. It is releasing impossible demands. Another essential skill is emotional processing. Loops often repeat because an emotion has not been felt fully. The mind thinks because the body has not released. When you allow yourself to feel sadness, fear, or disappointment without analyzing it, the need for looping decreases. Emotion moves when it is allowed. Suppressed emotion repeats as thought. Breaking loops also involves setting mental boundaries. Not every thought deserves your attention. You learn to choose not to engage. This does not mean suppressing thoughts. It means allowing them to pass without response. Attention is fuel. What you feed grows. Another important step is reducing rumination triggers. Fatigue, hunger, overstimulation, and stress all increase looping. Caring for basic needs reduces mental vulnerability. A regulated body supports a regulated mind. Another reason loops persist is the belief that thinking equals responsibility. Many people fear that stopping the loop means they are being careless. They believe constant thinking is required to prevent mistakes. This belief keeps the loop alive. In reality, clarity improves when the mind rests. Rest is not negligence. It is preparation. Breaking loops also means changing how you respond when a loop returns. Loops do not disappear instantly. They weaken gradually. Each time you notice a loop and choose not to engage, you train the brain. Repetition of disengagement creates new pathways. This is retraining, not suppression. Another helpful practice is redirecting attention gently. You do not force distraction. You choose grounding activities that anchor you in the present. Sensory input, such as noticing sounds, textures, or movement, pulls attention out of the loop naturally. Presence dissolves loops. Another layer of breaking loops is self-compassion. Many people become frustrated with themselves for overthinking. This frustration adds another layer of mental activity. Compassion softens the nervous system. A softened system loops less. Another key insight is that some loops are rooted in identity. You may loop on thoughts that challenge how you see yourself. The mind tries to defend identity by replaying scenarios. Recognizing this helps you loosen attachment to certain narratives. Breaking loops also requires patience. The mind learned these patterns over time. It will unlearn them the same way. Progress is not measured by never looping again. It is measured by how quickly you exit the loop when it appears. Another powerful tool is journaling with limits. Writing thoughts down can create closure. But endless journaling can become another loop. The key is containment. You set a time limit, write everything out, and then stop. This signals completion. Completion calms the mind. Another important practice is decision closure. Indecision fuels loops. When possible, you make a decision and commit. You accept imperfection. Movement breaks, mental stalling, Action grounds thinking. Another reason loops persist is overstimulation. Too much input leaves no space for processing. Reducing stimulation allows the mind to digest experiences rather than replay them. Breaking loops also involves trust. Trust that you can handle outcomes even if they are not perfect. Trust reduces vigilance. Reduced vigilance quiets the mind. Another essential shift is letting go of solving everything internally. Some thoughts need expression, not analysis. Talking to someone you trust can release loops by externalizing them. Connection regulates mind. Another key practice is noticing when loops appear. Often they arise at specific times, such as late at night, during fatigue, or after stress. Awareness allows prevention. Prevention is easier than interruption. Another important insight is that clarity does not come from more thinking. It comes from space. Space allows perspective. Perspective ends loops. Breaking the cycle of mental loops is not about control. It is about relationship. You change how you relate to thoughts. You stop chasing them. You stop fighting them. You let them pass. Over time, the mind learns that it no longer needs to repeat itself to be heard. As this happens, something changes. Silence no longer feels threatening. Stillness becomes accessible. Thoughts slow naturally. In the next part, you will learn how to train your mind to slow down naturally, without forcing calm or suppressing thoughts. This is where effort gives way to ease and clarity becomes your default state. Slowing the mind is not something you force. The harder you try to be calm, the more tense the mind becomes. True mental calm emerges naturally when the conditions that keep the mind alert begin to dissolve. Training your mind to slow down is less about control and more about safety, trust, and rhythm. When the mind feels safe enough, it stops racing on its own. Most people approach mental calm like a task. They try to shut thoughts down, discipline them, or overpower them with techniques. This creates resistance. Resistance signals danger to the brain. The brain responds by becoming even more alert. Calm cannot grow in an environment of force. The mind slows when it no longer believes constant vigilance is necessary. The first step in training your mind to slow down naturally is regulating the nervous system. The nervous system is the foundation of mental speed. When the nervous system is activated, the mind races. When it is regulated, the mind settles. You cannot think your way into calm while the body remains tense. The body must receive signals of safety before the mind follows. One of the most effective signals of safety is slow, steady breathing. When breathing becomes deep and unhurried, the brain interprets this as safety. Heart rate lowers, muscles relax, and mental activity softens. This is not about special breathing techniques. It is about consistency. Slower breathing practiced regularly retrains the nervous system over time. Posture also matters. A tense, collapsed posture tells the brain that something is wrong. An upright, relaxed posture signals stability. Simply adjusting posture throughout the day can significantly affect mental speed. The body and mind are not separate systems. They constantly inform each other. Another critical element is rhythm. The mind accelerates when life has no rhythm. Irregular sleep, chaotic schedules, and constant stimulation remove predictability. Predictability creates safety. Creating simple daily rhythms gives the mind permission to rest. Sleep is especially important. A tired brain cannot slow down. Lack of sleep keeps stress hormones elevated and reduces emotional regulation. Improving sleep quality often reduces overthinking more than any mental technique. Another foundational practice is reducing stimulation. The modern environment keeps the brain constantly engaged. Screens, notifications, news, and information overload prevent mental settling. Training the mind to slow down requires intentional breaks from stimulation. Quiet moments without input allow the nervous system to reset. Silence is not empty. It is restorative. Many people avoid silence because they associate it with discomfort. But silence is where the mind relearns how to rest. At first, thoughts may increase. This is normal. It is release, not regression. Over time, silence becomes soothing rather than threatening. Another key factor is emotional permission. The mind often races because emotions are not allowed space. When emotions are suppressed, the mind stays active trying to manage them. Allowing emotions to be felt without analysis reduces mental activity. Feeling is faster than thinking. Emotion passes when it is acknowledged. This does not mean dwelling on emotion. It means allowing it to exist without commentary. Another important aspect is reducing internal pressure. Pressure tells the brain it must perform constantly. Letting go of unrealistic expectations allows the mind to slow. You do not need to have everything figured out. You do not need to think constantly to be responsible. Releasing this pressure creates internal relief. Another powerful way to slow the mind naturally is through grounding in the present moment. The mind races when attention lives in the past or future. Bringing attention to sensory experience anchors awareness. Noticing sounds, temperature movement, or physical sensations pulls attention out of thought. Presence interrupts rumination. Another critical practice is learning to end the day mentally. Many people carry the day into the night. Thoughts continue because the mind never received closure. Creating a simple end-of-day ritual such as writing down tasks or reflecting briefly signals completion. Completion calms the brain. Another important element is reducing decision fatigue. Too many choices keep the mind busy. Simplifying routines reduces cognitive load. Fewer decisions mean less thinking. Training the mind to slow also involves changing your relationship with productivity. Constant productivity tells the brain rest is unsafe. Building rest into your identity allows the mind to relax without guilt. Rest is not a reward. It is maintenance. Another key practice is trusting your mind again. Overthinking often stems from distrust. You believe that if you stop thinking something will go wrong? Learning to trust that important thoughts will return when needed reduces vigilance. Trust creates calm. Another aspect is allowing boredom. Boredom is often avoided, but it is a gateway to mental rest. When stimulation decreases, the mind initially seeks activity. Over time, it adapts and settles. Boredom teaches the brain that nothing bad happens when nothing happens. Another important practice is emotional containment. You allow thoughts to exist without following them. You notice them and return attention to the present. This is not suppression. It is choice. Each time you choose not to engage, you train the brain. Training is repetition, not perfection. Another key factor is physical movement. Gentle movement releases stored tension. Tension fuels mental speed. Movement allows the body to discharge stress. A relaxed body supports a relaxed mind. Another essential shift is reframing stillness. Stillness is not emptiness. It is fullness without noise. When you stop labeling stillness as dangerous, the mind begins to enjoy it. Another important element is reducing self-criticism. Harsh inner dialogue keeps the mind alert. Kindness tells the brain it is safe. Compassion reduces internal threat. Another practice is limiting rumination time. If the mind wants to think, you can give it structured time. Outside that time, you gently redirect. This containment teaches boundaries. Another aspect is letting go of mental multitasking. Multitasking fragments attention. Single tasking allows deeper focus and calmer thinking. Another important shift is recognizing that clarity often comes after rest, not before. Many people think they must think until clarity arrives. Often clarity arrives when thinking stops. Rest reveals insight. Another practice is slowing speech. Speaking slower calms the nervous system. Internal speech follows external patterns. Slower speech leads to slower thinking. Another key element is reducing caffeine and stimulants when necessary. Stimulants increase mental speed and anxiety for many people. Supporting the body supports the mind. Another powerful practice is accepting that some thoughts do not need answers. Acceptance ends loops. Not every question deserves resolution. Another important factor is patience. The mind learns speed over time. It will relearn calm the same way. Expecting instant silence creates frustration. Frustration fuels thinking. Gentleness accelerates progress. Another practice is creating mental safe spaces. Activities that consistently calm you become signals of safety. Reading, walking, nature music, or routine tasks teach the brain how to slow. Another essential element is internal reassurance. When thoughts race you, gently reassure yourself that you are safe. Reassurance reduces vigilance. Another important aspect is consistency. Calm is built through repeated exposure, not occasional effort. Daily small practices matter more than intense sessions. Another key is recognizing early signs of mental acceleration. Catching the mind early prevents spirals. Awareness improves over time. Another powerful insight is that slowing the mind does not reduce intelligence. It enhances it. A calm mind sees clearly, decides wisely, and responds effectively. Another essential shift is letting go of identity tied to overthinking. You are not your thoughts. You do not lose yourself when the mind quiets. You rediscover yourself. Another important practice is allowing imperfection. Accepting that life will always contain some uncertainty reduces the need for constant thinking. Another key element is emotional honesty. Being honest with yourself reduces internal conflict. Conflict fuels thinking. Another aspect is gratitude. Gratitude shifts attention from threat to safety. Safety quiets the mind. Another important practice is reflection without rumination. You reflect briefly and then let go. Another essential shift is understanding that calm is not passive. It is an active state of regulation. As you train your mind to slow down naturally, you will notice subtle changes. Thoughts become less urgent. Silence feels less threatening. You experience moments of clarity without effort. These moments grow. In the next part, you will learn how emotional regulation supports mental clarity and how managing emotion reduces overthinking at its root. This is where calm becomes sustainable and clarity becomes consistent. Mental clarity is not created by controlling thoughts alone. It is created by regulating emotion. Emotion is the fuel behind overthinking. When emotions are unregulated, the mind compensates by analyzing, worrying, and replaying. When emotions are regulated, the mind naturally becomes quieter, clearer, and more focused. This is why emotional regulation is one of the most important skills for ending overthinking permanently. Most people were never taught how to regulate emotion. They were taught to suppress, ignore, distract, or overreact. Suppression keeps emotion trapped in the body. Overreaction amplifies it. Both keep the mind busy. Regulation is different. Regulation means allowing emotion to be felt without letting it take control. Emotion itself is not the problem. Unprocessed emotion is. When emotion arises, the nervous system reacts first. Heart rate changes, muscles tense, breathing shifts. If this reaction is not regulated, the mind interprets it as danger and begins thinking rapidly to regain control. Overthinking is often a secondary response to emotional activation. This means that if you want mental clarity, you must address the body before the mind. The first step in emotional regulation is awareness. You cannot regulate what you do not notice. Many people jump straight into thinking without noticing the emotional signal underneath. Learning to pause and ask, "What am I feeling right now?" interrupts the automatic loop. Naming emotion reduces its intensity. When you label emotion accurately, the brain shifts from reaction to observation. Observation creates distance. Distance creates choice. Another critical step is allowing emotion without judgment. Judgment tells the brain that the emotion is dangerous or unacceptable. This increases resistance and prolongs the emotional response. Allowing emotion means letting it exist without trying to fix it, explain it, or eliminate it. Emotion is temporary by nature. It moves when it is allowed. It stays when it is resisted. Another essential aspect of regulation is breath. Emotion changes breathing automatically. Anxiety shortens breath. Fear speeds it up. Sadness slows it down. Consciously adjusting breath sends a signal back to the nervous system. Slow, steady breathing tells the body it is safe. Safety reduces emotional intensity. Regulation also involves physical grounding. Emotion lives in the body. If the body is tense, emotion stays activated. Gentle movement, stretching, walking, or relaxing muscles helps discharge emotional energy. The mind quiets when the body releases. Another important element is self-reassurance. Many people learn to criticize themselves for emotional reactions. Criticism increases stress. Reassurance reduces it. Speaking to yourself calmly during emotional activation teaches the nervous system that support is present. Support calms faster than control. Another key skill is differentiating emotion from identity. Feeling anxious does not mean you are anxious as a person. Feeling sad does not mean something is wrong with you. When emotion becomes identity, the mind clings to it and analyzes it. Separation reduces mental noise. Another powerful aspect of emotional regulation is containment. Containment means allowing emotion to be present without letting it spill into behavior. You feel anger without acting aggressively. You feel fear without panicking. This builds confidence in your ability to handle emotion. Confidence reduces vigilance. Another important practice is recognizing emotional triggers. Triggers are situations, thoughts, or interactions that activate emotional responses quickly. Awareness of triggers allows preparation. Preparation reduces surprise. Reduced surprise reduces overthinking. Another essential skill is reducing emotional buildup. Emotion accumulates when not processed. Small daily releases prevent overload. Talking, journaling, movement, or quiet reflection allow emotion to move before it becomes overwhelming. Another critical aspect is sleep. Emotional regulation is severely impaired when sleep is poor. A tired brain reacts more intensely and recovers more slowly. Supporting sleep supports emotional stability. Another factor is nutrition. Blood sugar fluctuations and dehydration affect emotional regulation. Physical imbalance amplifies emotional response. Caring for the body reduces emotional volatility. Another important practice is slowing down reactions. Emotional reactions happen quickly. Response can be slower. Pausing before responding gives the nervous system time to settle. Even a few seconds can prevent spirals. Pause is power. Another key element is emotional validation. Validation does not mean agreement. It means acknowledging that an emotion makes sense given context. Validation reduces internal conflict. Conflict fuels thinking. Another powerful shift is moving from problem-solving to presence. Many people try to solve emotions mentally. Emotions are not problems. They are signals. Presence allows them to pass. Another aspect of regulation is reducing emotional suppression. Suppressed emotion resurfaces as anxiety, rumination, and tension. Expression in safe ways prevents mental noise. Another important practice is practicing emotional literacy. Many people use vague labels like stressed or overwhelmed. Learning to identify specific emotions improves regulation. Specificity creates clarity. Another key element is regulating expectations. Unrealistic expectations create emotional strain. Accepting limitations reduces pressure. Another important aspect is boundary setting. Emotional overload often comes from absorbing others' emotions or responsibilities. Boundaries protect emotional energy. Protected energy supports clarity. Another powerful practice is self-compassion. Compassion calms the nervous system. Harshness activates it. Treating yourself kindly during emotional moments reduces duration and intensity. Another critical element is reducing emotional avoidance behaviors. Avoidance keeps emotion unresolved. Gradual exposure builds tolerance. Tolerance reduces fear. Another important skill is emotional recovery. You will experience emotional spikes. Regulation is about how quickly you return to baseline. Faster recovery means less rumination. Another aspect is trust. Trust that you can feel emotion without being overwhelmed. This trust reduces mental monitoring. Another powerful practice is grounding in values during emotional moments. Values guide behavior when emotion is strong. This prevents regret and rumination. Another important element is recognizing that emotional regulation is learned, not innate. Practice matters more than talent. Another key is patience. Emotional patterns formed over years do not disappear instantly. Progress is measured by awareness and recovery, not perfection. Another practice is noticing when overthinking is actually emotional overflow. Addressing the emotion directly often ends the thinking. Another important shift is allowing vulnerability. Vulnerability reduces internal tension. Tension fuels overthinking. Another element is cultivating safety cues. Environments, people, and routines that feel safe help regulate emotion. Safety quiets the mind. Another key practice is ending emotional cycles intentionally. Closure reduces repetition. Another important aspect is accepting emotional complexity. You can feel multiple emotions at once. Accepting complexity prevents analysis paralysis. Another powerful insight is that clarity is not emotional absence. It is emotional balance. As emotional regulation improves, you notice a change. Thoughts lose urgency. Loops weaken. The mind feels lighter. Decisions feel easier. You are no longer fighting your mind. You are supporting it. In the next part, you will learn how to make decisions without doubt or regret, and how clarity emerges naturally when emotion and thought work together instead of against each other. Most overthinking is not about the past or the future. It is about decisions. Decisions you have not made, decisions you are afraid to make, or decisions you already made, but keep revisiting. The mind loops because it wants certainty, reassurance, and safety. It wants to know that the choice was right and that nothing bad will happen because of it. When it cannot get that guarantee, it keeps thinking. Learning to make decisions without doubt or regret does not mean you will always choose perfectly. It means you stop punishing yourself for being human. Clarity does not come from perfect decisions. It comes from self-trust. The first truth you must accept is that no decision comes with complete information. Waiting for certainty keeps you stuck. The mind convinces you that more thinking will create safety, but in reality it delays action and increases anxiety. At some point, thinking stops helping and starts harming. A clear decision is not the one with the best possible outcome. It is the one you can stand behind without self-betrayal. Doubt after decisions usually comes from unrealistic expectations. Many people believe that if a decision is right, it should feel calm, confident, and obvious. In reality, most meaningful decisions feel uncomfortable. Discomfort does not mean wrong. It means growth, risk, or uncertainty. Confusing discomfort with danger creates regret. Another major source of doubt is fear of responsibility. When you choose, you accept ownership of the outcome. Ownership feels heavy. To avoid that weight, the mind keeps decisions open. But open decisions drain energy. Closure restores it. Regret often comes from self-judgment, not from the decision itself. When something does not go as planned, the mind attacks the past version of you. It judges choices made with limited information and different emotional states. This judgment is unfair and destructive. You cannot judge past decisions with present knowledge. Making decisions without regret begins with compassion for the version of you who chose with what they knew at the time. Compassion closes loops. Judgment keeps them open. Another reason decisions haunt the mind is fear of irreversible consequences. The mind exaggerates permanence. It assumes one decision will define everything. This is rarely true. Most decisions are adjustable. Life is more flexible than the mind believes. Flexibility reduces pressure. Another key skill is distinguishing between reversible and irreversible decisions. Many choices are reversible, but treated as permanent. This inflates anxiety. Recognizing reversibility allows quicker decisions. Another powerful cause of doubt is comparison. You imagine alternative paths and ideal outcomes. You compare your choice to hypothetical versions of life that do not exist. This fantasy comparison creates dissatisfaction. You measure reality against imagination, and reality always feels lacking. Peace comes from commitment, not comparison. Once you choose, you must commit mentally. Commitment means you stop reopening the decision unless new information appears. Reopening without new data is rumination, not responsibility. Another source of regret is acting against values. When a decision violates your values, the mind protests. Doubt is a signal, not noise. Learning to align decisions with values reduces regret dramatically. Values simplify decisions. When values are clear, many choices become obvious. Another reason decisions feel heavy is emotional overload. Making decisions while emotionally dysregulated leads to second-guessing. Emotional regulation must come before decision-making. Calm creates clarity. Another important practice is separating decision quality from outcome. A good decision can lead to a bad outcome. A bad decision can lead to a good one. Outcome does not determine decision quality. Process does. Judging decisions by outcome alone creates fear. Another powerful shift is accepting trade-offs. Every decision involves loss. When you pretend you can avoid loss, the mind keeps searching. Acceptance ends searching. You are choosing between costs, not between perfect options. Another reason doubt persists is fear of disappointing others. When decisions are driven by external approval, regret follows. Authentic choices reduce internal conflict. Another key skill is setting decision deadlines. Endless thinking creates paralysis. Deadlines force clarity. Even self-imposed deadlines help the mind move forward. Another important practice is simplifying options. Too many options increase doubt. Limiting choices improves confidence. Another major source of regret is hindsight bias. After outcomes are known, the mind believes it should have known. This illusion creates shame. You must remind yourself that hindsight is not foresight. Another critical element is trusting your ability to adapt. If you trust that you can handle consequences, the mind relaxes. Fear of coping fuels indecision. Resilience reduces doubt. Another important practice is post-decision closure rituals. Writing a brief statement of why you chose what you chose helps anchor the decision. This becomes a reference when doubt appears. Another key shift is letting go of the need for external validation. When decisions depend on others' approval, doubt persists. Internal validation builds confidence. Another important skill is noticing when doubt is actually anxiety. Anxiety wants reassurance, not answers. Addressing anxiety directly reduces decision rumination. Another practice is accepting that regret is part of growth. Avoiding regret completely means avoiding life. Learning from regret without self-punishment builds wisdom. Another essential shift is identity-based decision-making. You choose based on who you want to be, not on fear. Identity-driven choices create coherence. Another important element is patience with outcomes. Results unfold over time. Early judgment fuels regret. Time provides perspective. Another key practice is distinguishing intuition from fear. Intuition feels calm and grounded. Fear feels urgent and loud. Learning this difference improves decision quality. Another important aspect is reducing mental replay. Replaying decisions reinforces doubt. When you notice replay, you redirect attention. Another powerful practice is gratitude for choice. Having choices is a privilege. Gratitude reframes pressure into opportunity. Another essential element is self-trust. Self-trust is built by honoring decisions once made. Each time you stand by yourself, confidence grows. Another key insight is that clarity often comes after action, not before. Movement generates information. Another important practice is accepting imperfection. No decision guarantees happiness. Expecting that creates disappointment. Another aspect is learning to forgive yourself quickly. Forgiveness prevents mental spirals. Another key skill is focusing on effort rather than outcome. Effort is controllable. Outcome is not. Another important element is reframing mistakes as data. Data informs future choices. Another powerful shift is ending the belief that one decision defines you. Identity is built over time. Another practice is recognizing emotional attachment to outcomes. Attachment creates fear. Another key element is practicing decisiveness in small things. Small decisions train confidence for bigger ones. Another important aspect is recognizing when overthinking is avoidance. Making the decision often ends anxiety. Another essential shift is choosing alignment over certainty. Alignment feels steady even when uncertain. Another powerful practice is reminding yourself that you can course correct. Life is dynamic. Another key insight is that regret grows when you abandon yourself afterward. Staying self-supportive dissolves regret. Another important element is focusing forward rather than backward. Forward motion quiets the mind. Another practice is grounding decisions in present reality, not imagined futures. Another essential shift is trusting life to respond. Control is limited. Another important aspect is releasing perfectionism. Perfectionism is fear disguised as standards. Another key skill is learning when enough. Thinking is enough. Another powerful insight is that peace comes from owning choices, not avoiding them, as you learn to make decisions without doubt or regret. Something changes inside. The mind stops circling. Energy returns. Confidence grows. You realize that clarity is not certainty. It is commitment with compassion. In the final part, you will learn how to live with a calm, focused, and clear mind, and how to maintain mental clarity as a way of life rather than a temporary state. This is where everything integrates and the mind finally learns how to rest. Living with a calm, focused, and clear mind is not about reaching a permanent state where thoughts never arise and challenges no longer exist. It is about developing a new relationship with your mind, where clarity becomes your baseline and noise becomes temporary. Calm is no longer something you chase. It is something you return to. A clear mind is not empty. It is spacious. Thoughts still appear, but they no longer crowd your awareness or demand constant attention. You notice them without being pulled into them. This shift changes how you experience life at every level. The foundation of a calm, focused mind is acceptance. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It means acknowledging reality as it is without fighting it mentally. Resistance creates noise. Acceptance creates space. When you stop arguing with what is happening, the mind relaxes naturally. Clarity grows when you stop trying to control every outcome. Control is limited. The need for control fuels anxiety and overthinking. When you accept uncertainty as part of life, the mind stops scanning constantly. It learns that not knowing is survivable. Living clearly also means prioritizing presence. Presence is where calm lives. When your attention is anchored in what you are doing right now, the mind has less room to wander. You begin to experience life directly rather than through constant commentary. Focus improves when you reduce internal conflict. Many people feel scattered because part of them wants one thing while another part resists it. Alignment between values, actions, and intentions simplifies the mind. When you live in alignment, thinking decreases. A calm mind also comes from respecting your limits. Exhaustion creates noise. Rest creates clarity. You stop treating rest as weakness and start treating it as intelligence. A rested mind sees more clearly and reacts less emotionally. Another key aspect is consistency. Calm is not built through occasional effort. It is built through daily choices. Small habits like regular sleep, reduced stimulation, emotional honesty, and gentle self-talk compound over time. Clarity also depends on boundaries. A mind without boundaries absorbs everything. Opinions, expectations, drama, and information flood in. Boundaries protect mental space. You become selective about what you engage with and what you let go. Living with clarity means trusting yourself. Trust reduces monitoring. When you trust your ability to handle situations, the mind no longer needs to rehearse constantly. Confidence quiets thought. Another important element is emotional balance. You allow yourself to feel without letting emotion dominate. This balance prevents emotional buildup and mental overflow. When emotion flows, thinking slows. Focus also improves when you simplify life. Complexity fuels overthinking. Simplifying schedules, commitments, and expectations reduces cognitive load. Less clutter outside creates less noise inside. A clear mind also requires compassion. Harshness creates tension. Tension creates rumination. Kindness relaxes the nervous system. When you treat yourself gently, the mind softens. Living calmly does not mean avoiding challenges. It means meeting them with steadiness. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of panic. You move forward without carrying unnecessary mental weight. Another key shift is letting go of the need to resolve every thought. Some thoughts do not need answers. They need permission to pass. Allowing thoughts to come and go restores flow. Clarity also deepens when you stop identifying with every mental story. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness noticing them. This separation is liberating. It gives you space to breathe mentally. A focused mind is supported by intentional attention. You choose where your attention goes. Attention is energy. When you stop scattering, clarity emerges naturally. Living with a calm mind also means embracing imperfection. Expecting life to be smooth creates frustration. Accepting ups and downs reduces resistance. Less resistance means less mental noise. Another important aspect is gratitude. Gratitude shifts attention from threat to safety. Safety calms the nervous system. Calm supports clarity. A clear mind is also supported by meaningful engagement. When you are engaged in purposeful activities, rumination decreases. Meaning anchors attention. Living this way also involves ongoing awareness. You notice when the mind speeds up and respond early. Early regulation prevents spirals. Awareness becomes second nature. Clarity grows when you allow silence. Silence is not empty. It is restorative. Over time, silence becomes comfortable. Comfort with silence is a sign of mental health. A calm, focused mind also changes how you relate to problems. Problems become tasks, not threats. You address them step by step without mental drama. Living clearly also means releasing comparison. Comparison fragments focus. You return attention to your own path. This brings peace. Another essential shift is patience. Mental clarity unfolds gradually. Expecting instant calm creates pressure. Pressure recreates noise. Patience allows progress. A calm mind also allows deeper enjoyment. When thoughts are not pulling you away, you experience moments fully. Presence brings richness. Living with clarity means accepting that some days will be noisier than others. This does not mean failure. It means being human. Recovery matters more than perfection. As this way of being settles in, you notice that overthinking no longer defines you. Thoughts come and go without control over you. You feel lighter, more grounded, and more capable. You are no longer at war with your mind. You have learned how to listen without obeying. You have learned how to think without drowning. You have learned how to rest without guilt. This is what it means to stop overthinking everything and think clearly again. Not by force, but by understanding. Not by control, but by trust. And from this place, your mind becomes what it was always meant to be. A tool, not a prison.